So just for today, let's just ignore my hair because I had a shower this morning and I used a hairdryer to dry it, and now it's big. So yeah, and if you've not noticed already, it is shorter. I had my hair cut last week. Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Prog Reviews. This is number 13. Some may consider this an unlucky number, some people might not. I personally don't. But this album isn't such an unlucky album. This is one of my favourite albums of the 70s, one of my favourite prog albums and a very iconic prog album. And if you read the title, you'll know what it is. This is the Yes album by Yes. I've actually not done a review on any Yes albums yet. So this is the first one, and I kind of just wanted an excuse to re-listen to this album because I'd been meaning to for so long, and I finally got around to it today, and I realised how much of a masterpiece it is, and I think it is one of their best albums, in my humble opinion. So this is a 1971 album, so this is a 50th anniversary. Do I own any copies of it? Yes, I do. So I actually have a copy of this album on different medias. So I've got a CD version here, which is from the Studio Collection box set, so it's like a mini LP kind of thing. I've got this copy, which is from the Steven Wilson remix box set, and I've also got this copy, which is the first vinyl copy that I got of it, which is just an old pressing of the album. Not sure if it's definitely not an original, but it's an old one. This is by the way, this is the box set that I was talking about with the CD version. Okay, so let's just get on with the actual review itself. So this is not a very long album, it's 6 tracks long, but a few of them are quite long, some of the tracks, so I'll just get into it now. So the first track on the album is Yours Is No Disgrace, and I think this is such a great album opener, such like an explosive intro. I like the build-up of the instruments in the introduction, you know, and the entrance of the keyboards, enter of the drums, and everything. It just all fits in so nicely together. The tempo changes are done really well. Vocal harmonizing through the roof throughout this album. Some great harmonizing, and they've got 3 great dynamics actually for their vocal harmonies, which is great. The bass tone is great on this, and very much like a lead role throughout the song and throughout the album, and just throughout the whole kind of Yes sound, really. That really pushed forward bass guitar. I'm a big fan of that. Great repetition, there was a lot of that throughout this album as well. Like, they'll have one section and they'll kind of bring it back and repeat it in another part of the song, and yeah, it just worked really well. Different mood changes as well, so there were parts where it was quite loud, and then there were parts where it was very kind of calming and more delicate, and then it would go back into that loud, and then it's a great dynamic throughout the track. The acoustic was played really well in the acoustic section of the song, and there was a great kind of transition from the electric to the acoustic. Vocal range is great. Big John Anderson fan. I like his solo work as well as his stuff with Yes. And I really like his range as well. He's just got such a great range. And very kind of higher range for a man's vocal style, which is amazing. And this is personally one of my favourite Yes songs of all time. It was one of the first Yes tracks that I listened to often. I mean, I obviously knew things like Roundabout, but this album, and in particular Yours Is No Disgrace and Starship Trooper, which I'll come to later, were 2 songs that my dad showed me, so I've known those ones for a long amount of time. Surprisingly, this isn't my favourite Yes album. Close to the Edge, as you can see from my shirt, will always be my favourite Yes album. As of now, I mean, Relay is actually coming quite a close second at the moment. I've been listening to that. So the next track on this album is The Clap. This is just a very short 3-minute kind of interlude track. It is very much like Mood for a Day, which is on Fragile. It's that kind of a vibe, which is just like a small acoustic session. But what I liked about this particular track is it was actually done live, because at the beginning you can hear John Anderson talking but through a microphone. So this is like a live take. Big fan of live takes. So I did a college project with some friends where we had to record like an EP for one of our assignments, and the majority of the tracks that we recorded were all live, and you just get a different vibe. I like the variation throughout this album of the live take and the studio take. It's really great dynamic, but going to the actual song itself, great guitar techniques and, you know, varied playing. There was like some aggressive parts and some kind of more delicate parts, which is what I like about Steve Howe's playing in general. Sometimes it can just be really loud and aggressive. I don't know if aggressive is the right word, but that kind of louder sound, and then also his acoustic playing, which is absolutely fantastic and beautiful and very ambient and really, you know, brings the whole kind of band together. It's a very iconic guitar sound as well. And great acoustics, as I mentioned. So, not talking about the actual acoustic guitar itself, which was great, but I'm talking about the acoustics of, like, the recording itself. It sounds great. The acoustic guitar was recorded really well. I found that recording acoustic guitar was really hard when I was in college and learning about recording techniques, but this was done really well. And it's very crisp, very clear, you can hear it all, and it was done really, really well. And it wasn't overdone, it was just the perfect amount of playing. It wasn't dragged out or anything like that. The recording itself was just great. You know, there was nothing inherently wrong with it at all. Now we're going into Starship Trooper, which is the third track on the album. It's a longer one. It's one that's divided up into 3 sections. And I wrote here that the intro gets me every time, because every time I hear that introduction to Starship Trooper, it just sends shivers down my spine. It just reminds me of just a really happy time in my life. Great bass work, great keyboards work throughout this. Vocals were very, very well produced on this track, and I liked the added reverb, of course. There was a very smooth transition between each section of the track, which, you know, if you do it right, it's done well, but if you don't do it right, it's really all over the place and very mismatched, but this was done so well. Great acoustic sections with the harmonies and that particular kind of acoustic section, which led back into the repetition of the main body of Starship Trooper. So I wrote here that I like the way that the band have taken that original idea, that original kind of intro, and kind of varied it in different parts. Like, they would speed it up, they would slow it down, and they would shift the notes around, but it was like that same kind of melody but just changed around, which is really great. I love when bands can do that. They can take something that they've come up and just kind of vary it, but it still sounds good. I've written about one particular section, which is the end bit. Smooth transition, great guitar effects on this bit. I love this part of the track. It's the ending bit. The drums when they fade in, and the build up of all the instruments coming in. Very, very great drum production. I just want to make that clear. The drum production on this album, well, this is the remix that I heard. I think it could have been a Steven Wilson remix. But the drums sounded great. You know, like, everything just sounded amazing when it came to the drums. I mean, it wasn't, you know, all the levels were balanced and it was great. The actual higher frequencies of the drum kit sounded great, didn't sound too, like, ringy or anything, and the snare sounded great. Everything sounded great when it came to the drums. Great guitar solo as well, and the fade out of the track. This is one of my all-time favourite Yes tracks as well. Those two, as I said, I was introduced to Yes by those 2 tracks. So I knew bits from Fragile, as I said, I knew roundabout, but this album was kind of my intro to Yes, in the sense that I didn't actually hear the album itself for a really long time, but I knew that those 2 tracks. So the next one is one that I think everyone kind of knows from this album, because when I typed in Yes on Spotify, it was one of the top 5 tracks. I've Seen All Good People, and it's a fantastic track. That intro, I think everyone just knows the introduction to that track, that vocal a cappella harmonizing bit at the beginning is just absolutely amazing. Sends shivers down my spine. It's such well done, and I'm sure that took a long time to kind of get that right with the perfect harmonies and all that, but it was done so well, and it will forever be one of my favourite Yes introductions to a track. And the acoustic entrance was just beautiful. As I said, I'm a big fan of Steve Howe's acoustic playing as much as I love his electric. Sometimes I find that some guitarists will be better on electric than acoustic, or vice versa, but I think that Steve Howe's got a great balance between being a great electric guitar player and a great acoustic guitar player, and just stringed instruments in general. Beautiful harmonies, vocals, and keyboard entry. The keyboards on this was so great, and this has actually not got Rick Wakeman on it. I think this is Tony Kaye, I think that's the name of the keyboard player before Wakeman, but this is, keyboard work throughout this is absolutely fantastic, and I love what it adds to the band, and it's definitely a different sound to Rick Wakeman. You can definitely tell the difference. I felt that in this album the keyboard playing was a little more subtle than something that I'd hear on like Close to the Edge or Fragile, but it really worked with the music in general. I mean, you can definitely hear the keyboards, but it's very much more subtle, more in the middle to back rather than being more in the front. I think I heard a recorder at one point in this track, but I really liked that kind of part. I don't know why, I just really liked that part of the track with the recorder, and not sure why. I just like that. I think I like the recorder when it's done well. Definitely on something like the Beatles' Fall on the Hill, that kind of bit towards the end of the track with the recorder. So I like that a lot. Great bass lines and great guitar work, as I said. There wasn't much drumming in the intro. It was kind of a bit more in the back, but I really loved how it kind of built up to the kind of crashing bit later on when everything comes in and everything's playing, and you can just hear so much going on in this track. The repetition of the I've seen all good people bit at the beginning, and putting that at the end when they when it fades out with the organ, and just the organ and the vocals, and the way it goes down in semitones. So they take that I've seen all good people and just going down and down and down in semitones, and I don't know why I love that while the track's fading out, and that just worked so well. And it also showed the great vocal dynamic that the singers add to it. So the next track is A Venture. So we're getting to the penultimate track on the album now. Just a great introduction to this. This has got such a great introduction, and beautiful and atmospheric and everything. Great harmonizing. I have mentioned that so much throughout this review already, but the harmonies on this album were done very well. I think they've got a lot of great vocal variations in their group, because each of them sound different. So sometimes you'll find with a group that when you've got the harmonies, sometimes all the voices sound too similar and it doesn't add too much, but the harmonies have a lot of depth to them, because you've got obviously the higher vocal ranges of John Anderson and Chris Squire, but then almost like a lower vocal style of Steve Howe. It's very different, and I liked the variation throughout just Yes and the harmonizing in general. I heard that mainly when I listened to Close to the Edge for the first time, the kind of middle section, the very ambient, when it's the harmonizing, and I learned that was just there was just a different variation, and all three of them bring something different to the whole idea of harmonizing, and yeah, just a great trio of vocals. I found that the bass and keyboards really carried this track. We're still talking about A Venture, by the way. I really carried this track forward, and then and the vocals again sounding really great. And the exit of the track, which was just piano, absolutely fantastic. And now the final track on the album, Perpetual Change. This was one that I wasn't too familiar with, because as I said, I haven't heard this album in a long time, and it took me a while to actually listen to the album, but I really liked this track a lot. Definitely a mood change from A Venture. You can definitely hear the transition of something that's a little bit quieter and a little bit more ambient to something that kind of crashes into another song. Great intro. I thought it was very thundering. That bass, the bass is so great on this album. Great vocal work and great vocal dynamics, as I've said. There was some... So when I think of John Anderson's vocal style, I think of something like Close to the Edge, where it was just kind of not too aggressive, just kind of not strained, nothing. It was just very fluent. I don't know how to describe it. I've got a word in my head, but it's like on the tip of my tongue. and effortless. That's what I mean. It's very effortless, but in this particular track, I found it was a bit more aggressive in a way, and I kind of really liked that because I'm used to the kind of whimsical singing rather than the aggressiveness of his voice, and I really did like that dynamic, and it kind of worked at being the last track on the album. I liked the change in atmosphere into the quieter sections of this track. Great dynamics, harmonies, and a great way to close the album. Just a great album closer. And I would probably give this album a 9 out of 10. Purely because it was not one that I'd heard too many times, but upon listening to it, I think for most of the week, it definitely went up and up in my estimates. It's probably one of my favourite Yes albums at this point. And it was just such a beautiful album, so many different varieties. I think there's something in here for everyone. You've got that acoustic sections, you've got electric sections, you've got great bass lines, you've got great keyboards playing, and of course great singing, great harmonising if you're a fan of harmonies. I know if you guys like the Beatles, if you like those kind of harmonies, then you'll like, or Queen even, you'll like these kind of harmonies throughout Yes. I know that I think Queen were quite heavily inspired by Yes. Maybe not the whole band, but definitely Brian May, I think. So if you like those kind of bands, like Queen and the Beatles, which do have a lot of the harmonies in it, then definitely give this album a listen. If you want to get into progressive rock, this is definitely an album to start with, because it's got everything in it that will help you get into and understand what progressive rock's all about. I mean, it's got long tracks, it's got short tracks, it's got harmonies, it's got great variation of moods, tempo changes, time signature changes. Such a fantastic record to just sit down and listen to and admire. It's just a fantastic album. I would kill to hear any of these albums live, or any of these tracks live, sorry. Okay, so that is the end of the video. Now, one quick thing before I leave you guys until Friday. I actually did a collaboration video with Notes Reviews yesterday. The video is uploaded now. I will leave the link to his video in the description down below. We both talk about our favourite double albums, so if that's what you're interested in, if you guys haven't already seen it, because I think a lot of my subscribers are already fans of Notes Reviews, then just check it out. It was great fun. Another thing quickly, so I posted a poll on Instagram earlier today asking if anyone would be interested in me doing monthly playlists on Spotify. I know a lot of you guys have commented stuff like that and sent me DMs and all that kind of stuff, and it's actually a very good idea. The problem with me is that I'm very forgetful, so I'll probably do it for like a few months and then I'll forget. But I thought it was a really great idea, and I think I'm going to start doing that, because then I can keep a recollection of what I was listening to throughout 2021. And you guys can have an idea of what I was listening to in 2021 and discover some new music. I mean, I've been discovering a lot of new albums this month, so my April monthly listens will probably be a bit more interesting and stuff that maybe you guys have told me about and I've listened to. So I will see you all on Friday for a Vinyl Community Friday video. Bye!